Hello, everybody. A bunch of people joining. That's awesome. I started this meeting maybe 2 minutes early, so I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for everyone else to get joined, and we'll get started. Seeing a few familiar names in this list. All right, it is officially 4 o'clock. Let's get started. Thank you guys so much for joining our workshop here. We did one a few months ago and got everyone seemed to really enjoy it. The fact that we're taking a little bit of time and sharing our product details with you guys. So the agenda for today, I called it back to the basics. We've had a lot of new customers joining over the last few months, and it seems like we've been doing a lot of one-on-one kind of tutorials, how to getting people started on the app. So the first part of this meeting is basically going to be that. And so that's why I called it back to the basics. I'm going to kind of walk through the startup procedure, look at the screens, the forms. If you are a veteran user of iFly EFB, you may catch a nugget in there. I'm not sure, or it may be a little redundant, but that's only the first part of the meeting. After that, we're going to talk about a little bit about version 13 and what we just released and what we're going to be releasing very shortly with 13.1. And then we're going to open it up for questions. So that is kind of the agenda for today. I anticipate going an hour, but if it needs to go over, that is perfectly okay. I'm going to try and get the questions answered. Keep in mind, it's not necessarily a support session. So if your questions are very specific to a specific issue or something that you might be having, I may need to redirect you to our support team, but I'm going to try and address as many questions as I can. So let me start by sharing my screen. Actually, give me just a second. I got to move some windows around here. All right, I'm figuring zoom out. Sorry about that, guys. Here we go. Okay, so the first thing I'm showing you here is the startup screen. This is if you've just downloaded the app from the App Store or the Play Store, and stepping one step a little further back. If you're a brand new customer and you want to use our product, all you need to do is go to the App Store if you're on Apple products, or go to the Play Store if you're on a Google or an Android product, and search for iFly EFB and then download it. Now on the Apple App Store, you're going to find two products are listed there. There's iFly EFB and iFly EFB Legacy. And we did that with the release of version 13 because a lot of the older iPads will not support the latest software release. It wasn't our choice. We did everything we could to try and maintain backward compatibility with some of the features we're doing, but Android does the same thing. They require certain minimum security requirements and things like that. So in order to support the really old Apple devices, we released iFly EFB Legacy, which is the equivalent of iFly 12.3. So it's basically a re-release of that with a changed name. So that's why there's two products. If you see both products, get iFly EFB. And if you only see iFly EFB Legacy, that means you have a very old version of the Android iOS, and you can download that one. Once the app is downloaded, you launch the app. And this screen that I'm showing you right here is the very first thing you see. It says, thanks for giving iFly EFB a try. And then there's a few questions that it's going to ask you. So you just click next. The first question is, do you need IFR charts? And so you'd say yes, or pick the IFR and VFR button if you are need the IFR charts. All right, I'm going to pause for just 1 second here and check. I want to make sure that everybody's hearing me okay. If I've opened up my meeting chat, if anybody's having issues hearing or anything like that, just type it into the chat and I'll try and keep an eye on that. But I'm going to keep running with the assumption that everyone can hear me okay. So anyway, if you need IFR, you can click that. I'm going to click pretend I click the VFR IFR. And the next question is, do you need the high-end routes? Now, those are for the more generally for commercial airliners and things like that. Thank you, Joyce and Andre. So I'm going to say no to that. Don't fly high altitudes. Next question is, do you need the helicopter charts? And most of us will say no to that, but we do have a lot of helicopter customers that will say yes to that. And then the final question is, what areas of the country do you want to fly? And it'll automatically select the areas that you're in. So I'm in North Texas, so it picked Oklahoma and Texas for me. But what you can do is just kind of swipe your finger around this map to pick all of the states you want to download, or you can hit select all. But the only difference is how much space it's going to take on your device. If you do select all and you do VFR, IFR, you're probably going to be 10 to 12 gigabytes of space needed on your device. A little more than that during those periods, but like the week or two prior to the cycle date, because you'll have both sets of charts on your device for a short period. So if you don't want to download that much data, just pick your normal areas, and you can always change this later. So pretend I've selected all of that, and then I hit begin download, and then it downloads. And then you just have to let it sit there and run. So that is the procedure for getting iFly installed. Depending on how much data you've picked, it might take a little while to download everything. Okay, I'm going to stop this share, and then I'm going to share iFly EFB, the app, and start my actual demonstration of the product. Give me 1 more second here. There we go. I'm hoping everyone can see that okay. Let me know if you can't. Okay, so I'm still in the mindset here that I am a first-time user, and this is the first time I've ever used the app. After the data is downloaded, when you launch the app, from then on, all the data is on the device. So you don't have to pack your bags. You don't have to do anything else. The unit is ready to fly and operate completely offline. So I wanted to just point that out. This is ready to go, and your data is downloaded. Now, if sometime in the future you did want to add more data or remove data, you can go to menu and then check for updates. And it's going to take you back to that same form where you can then, remove data and then delete it from your device. Or if you didn't have everything selected, you can add more data. This is very easy to do. And this is also where you're going to go when you need to, update your data. And if I came to this screen and it was either yellow or red, that means there's new data to be downloaded. And then you would just hit the begin download button, and it would get all the latest databases. Okay, so this is first time you've seen iFly EFB, you're going to notice some things. There's a row of buttons along the bottom, big buttons, easy to tap, easy to see, and there's instruments across the top. On the left side, right now I don't have any on the right side, and that's because I don't have a flight plan. So we'll see these instruments appear in a minute. On the left side of the screen are what I call the static instruments. So I have ground speed, flight duration, track, says your current course over the ground, and your GPS altitude and your GPS status. Hopefully you have 4 bars or you have an ADSB. And then this is a horizontal CDI or a follow the ball instrument here. And then across the bottom, we have menu, which takes you to some basic things like your account management, updates, simulation mode, kind of system level things, also setup, and we'll talk about that in a second. Map mode lets you control this map. So you can change it from VFR to vector to IFR. So it changes the base map. And then these are different layers underneath the base map. So you can turn on just by tapping different layers. And again, we'll drill into that a little more in a second as well. Nearest is like an emergency button. It gives you a rundown of all the airports in the nearby. And this little arrow, by the way, is your bearing to that airport. So you can immediately start navigating once you pull that nearest up. Flight plan lets you view your flight plan and do a bunch of other cool things. We'll drill into that in a second. Then we have tools, history, instrument group, which since I've started talking about instruments, let me go ahead and put in a simple flight plan so I can show you the rest of these instruments on the right side. Anytime you have a flight plan, these are going to appear to show your bearing, which is the direction you need to travel to reach your waypoint. Turn, if you're a little left or right of course, it'll tell you which direction to turn, your final airport or final destination, and your distance and ETE. These are our default instruments, and there are a lot more you could choose. And that's what this instrument group button does. So when I type instrument group, I can toggle it to extended, which adds a few more instruments. The vertical speed, the AGL altitude was added. And we added, I believe, the estimated time en route. And then there's also HSI. Everything's still looking good, everybody. My screen is just flickering a little bit as I'm popping these up. Can you see these menus as I pull the menus up? And Juanita, if you want to unmute and just say something, if you need to, that would be great. Just to make sure I'm on track. Okay. Perfect.
I guess a couple of questions.
Okay, so you change these instruments or the instrument stacks using this instrument group button. And then I'm just going to touch on this, but you can customize these instruments. Somebody's saying can't see menu bar on the bottom. Okay, I was worried about that. I'm going to share the entire screen instead of the app. See if that makes it a little better. Okay, all good. Okay, good deal. This instrument group lets you change the different instrument stacks, and then you can also hit customize if you want to modify this, like you can add additional instruments. We have a lot to choose from. That is a different topic. It's more of an advanced feature. In fact, we went into some detail on that on our last webinar, so you can find that on YouTube. Okay. So that's the basic map. Instruments on the top, commands and options and buttons along the bottom. But we also have this map here. Of course, you can pan and zoom and do things on the map. And one thing that is kind of unique about our app is you can get information or interact with this map just by tapping the screen. So if I tap that anywhere on the map, I get what we call the quick info pop-up. That's what this form is here. You can drag it around, move it, put it where you want. Now, since I tapped right on an airport, it assumed I was looking for airport details. And it gave me a quick summary of this airport, short stop. It gives me the elevation, the runway details. It's runway 17 and 35, and the lengths and width and a Unicom frequency. But there's more details here. I can hit airport info, and that'll pull up the full AFD for this airport, all nice spelled out in English. So you have all the basic information and any weather details, if there are any. I picked a very tiny little private strip here, but and then communications, frequencies, and more details on the runway. Everything that the FAA has on this runway is going to be included here. Let me pick a little bigger airport, like I'll pick Addison. Go into that airport info. Here you can see the tower schedule, the price for the fuel, the NOTAMs, if there are any. There's several here. You can tap that to get the full details on these NOTAMs. Weather, frequencies. So, and there's a lot of ways to get to this airport info page. But I think what I want you to take away from this just right now is one page. Everything is kind of outlined. You can pan up and down to get the details or color-coded sections, which makes it easy once you use this app a few times to swipe directly to the piece of information you need. Here's details on the FBOs, and et cetera. And then, of course, on the right side, we have a little thumbnail of the airport, and you can tap on that to get to the airport diagram, which will zoom in and show you both a real view and an airport diagram. Real view, by the way, on any of these airports, if I just zoom into it, like even the short stop, if I zoom in there, it will
How are you
transition
zooming,
to a
Walter?
satellite image of that airport. And these are pre-downloaded, so you don't have to have internet access to get those.
Walter, did you hear that question by chance? Did you happen to?
Okay.
No.
Another important button, if you're going to use our app, is this map mode button. Like I said earlier, this controls the base map. Now, when you're in VFR mode, it's automatically going to transition from sectionals to TACs, or if you're a helicopter pilot, to the helos. And yeah, you can use the plus and minus to zoom in and out, which is nice. You can also pinch zoom, of course. But one of the things that we're kind of known for is not requiring complex gestures to use our app. It really is designed for use in the cockpit. And a pinch zoom requires your hand to kind of hover over the tablet. And if you're bouncing around, that can be a difficult gesture. So tap and hold or double tap, all of those can be difficult gestures. So we have on the side here these plus and minuses that let you zoom in and out. And we also have this button over here, which lets you toggle the type of map you want to look at. Now, if I go in a little further, it's automatically going to switch over to the TAC chart. But I can hit that and switch it back to the sectional, or I can switch it even to the helicopter chart. Oh, okay. I have a note here that someone asked a question and I could not hear you. So let me figure that part out. And no, I cannot hear anything. So give me just 1 second to figure this out real quick.
Oh,
This probably isn't going to look pretty. So I'm going to go to the headset. I'm getting no audio. Well, I'm sure. Sorry, guys. I think I'm just going to have to look for questions in the meeting chat because I don't want to completely crater our meeting because my audio is not working properly. And Michael is saying, can you slow your presentation down some? And thank you for that feedback. I will endeavor to do so. And that is one of my failings. I realize I tend to talk and swipe and do everything fast. So let me try and slow down a little bit. Where I was going is on this left side. This button, which looks like 3 maps stacked on top of each other, lets you control the layer of the VFR chart that you have. So these are all VFR charts, but they're completely different scales. And like I said, by default, the system will pick the most appropriate based on your zoom level. But I can also manually override that. Also on map mode, we can switch to IFR. And since I earlier did download the IFR high, not in my screenshots, I realize, but I have all the data on my system. So I get to pick between low and high. So I'm just going to pick the IFR low, and then we change the base map. Now you'll notice all the layers that I have selected are still selected. So the terrain highlights, the glide ring, things like that. These layers are going to persist regardless of which base map I have selected, whether it's IFR low, vector, or anything else.
Oh, it looks like stop.
The vector map, which I just switched to, is kind of an automatic decluttered map. It's mainly, I think, useful for VFR because we do have things like roads, or airports are all being drawn, obstructions. But as I zoom out, it automatically removes the detail, and zooming in adds it back in.
Oh, that's different. That's this alert about the M14D. That's that construction.
Okay.
So you want to get
hey, can everybody mute yourself, please? Except me, I'll remain unmuted. But I think we've got someone off mute. That might be interfering a little bit. And with 109 people on the meeting, it is easy for that to accidentally happen. So I'm going to see if I can find some mutes. Okay. Organizer can mute all. Let me try and do that. Oh, there's a mute all. Okay, I'm gonna allow you to unmute yourself, but I am muting everybody. Thank you, Steve. Okay, back to map mode. Another important map mode option is this 3D EFS. If you turn that on, you're going to see our synthetic vision, which is a little different than some of the other synthetic visions in that it's very high contrast. And while I'm panning around, panning and zooming on the map, you'll see exactly, the layer over here. And you can also touch inside the synthetic vision to pan the camera around. So you can kind of look around or look down. I'm going to put this system in simulation mode so you can kind of see how this map and synthetic vision all works together. So let me remove a couple of these. I'm going to switch back to vector. I'm going to clear my flight plan, and then I'm going to start a simulation mode. Joseph, I will answer that question here in 1 second. The simulation mode, I know I just swiped through that really quick. If you go menu, start simulation mode, this is a really handy way to get familiar with the app on the ground before you're trying to figure it out while you're flying. It is very intuitive. A lot of people do just figure it out when they're flying, but it is nice to be able to play with some of these features and see how it's going to operate while you're flying. So if I hit show simulation controls, it's going to add the aircraft to the map right in the center of wherever your map is. And it puts this little control here, which lets me pretend like I'm flying the airplane. So I can click the button to speed up. I can start turning, and I can start putting in a climb. And so some of the things you'll notice here You'll notice the red and yellow highlights. Those are the terrain alerts that are being shown. I've got an alert that just popped up, the caution terrain. And this is because I started right in the middle of a field. I wasn't on an airport or anything. But as I climb, and I'm turning here so we can see off in the distance a little better, everything's going from yellow to red to clear and to green on the synthetic vision. And by the way, this you can really stress the system a little bit playing around with the synthetic vision. You can put it up to 20,000 knots just for fun to see what it's going to be like. Okay, there's another thing I'm going to point out here. Somebody asked, what's the ring around the airplane? So you'll notice this green ring. You slow back down to a reasonable speed. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This green ring is a glide ring. So this is indicating your safe glide. And this is based on your aircraft spec. This is also based on your speed and your altitude and the terrain and the winds aloft. So if you're really high, it's actually going to look at all the columns of the winds aloft data below you to come up with a very accurate glide ring. So it does require you enter accurate specs on your aircraft, but all the rest of that data is coming from our databases and the live weather, either coming from the internet or from the ADSP feed. So that's the ring around the airplane. William asked, before you went into simulation mode, the 3D view seemed to change with the view altitude. How do you control that? Great question. You control that by simply zooming in and out. So if I zoom out on this map, actually, when you pan the map, it's going to show you where you've panned to, and you'll notice this red line that's going right up the center of my map. That's the camera, and you can turn this, and this line is crossing is what you're seeing in the 3D view. And then when I zoom out, it's the equivalent of just going higher on the map, basically. And now it's just recentered me back to Dallas because I stopped simulation mode, so it's automatically recentered me. So the map just changed. Okay, a couple other points on map mode. Some of these buttons have gears off to the side. So METAR, NexRad. Let me turn the synthetic vision off and zoom out a little bit. And I'm looking for some NexRad. There we go. So here's some storms. And if I click on the gear next to NexRad, there's several options here. You can set the opacity, can force a quick update from the internet, all that'll happen automatically. But the one I was going to show you is animate. And so if you turn that on, now my NexRad is always going to be animated, and you'll see about a 45-minute run of the NexRad data. So you can see the pattern of storm movements and things like that. Tim is asking, how do you set heading and altitude bugs in 3D? Another excellent question. Both of those bugs are going to be set from your flight plan. So if I have a flight plan, and so hold on to that question a little bit, because I'm going to talk about flight planning and then I'll relate it to your question. I'm going to finish with my run through of map mode. But what I was saying a second ago is many of these layers have gears that let you drill into more details. Some of them, like the map sketch, for example, this gear can take you all the way into the match sketch tool so that you can add, delete, control your sketches, create new ones, things like that. Other of these little settings gears are going to take you to, for example, traffic will take you to settings for traffic. So they're all going to do different things, but they give you a finer grain way to control what these layers are doing. And fuel price is a great layer too. So familiarize yourself with these. They're documented a little more detail in our manual. And we also have on YouTube a whole bunch of quick tip videos that go into detail on some of these. But anyway, the long and short story here is this map mode you will use a lot. And by the way, there's a nice feature here, night mode, which darkens the screen and changes the color palette. So we have black menus and things like that. Darker overlays on the map. Sometimes your tablets just don't get dark enough. So that night mode helps a little bit. Okay, somebody just asked if high-res winds can be left on. It can be left on. I'm not sure I quite understand the question. There's always going to be this little control here when you have the high-res winds layer enabled. And what you're doing here with this particular layer is you're defining the altitude and the time, because we actually download a forecast. And this is usually used as a planning feature. So that's maybe why it's not typically left on, but it can be left on. It shouldn't interfere with your using of the map. And Michael, yes, this is being recorded, so it will be on YouTube. Okay, back to the basics. Talk a little bit about flight planning. Talked about the map, talked about the instruments, the buttons. Flight planning is, of course, core and fundamental to any EFB, including ours. You turn the fuel prices back off, and I'm going to give you several different ways that you can plan a flight and fly it with our product here. One, which you've seen me do a couple of times now, you can tap anywhere on the map and you can say flight planning, fly direct to. And now I've just created a point-to-point flight plan from my current location, which I'm very close to TKI, so it automatically assumed that departure point, to this airport that I randomly picked, Mount Vernon or Franklin County. Another way you can plan your flight is by hitting flight plan. I'm going to clear it. You can hit enter flight plan, and then you can just type the full thing up, TKI to LAL, for example. Or you can enter ATL, BOS, DFW. You can enter as many of these waypoints as you want. You can also enter fixes if there's specific fixes that you want to follow. So you can just type in a flight plan like right there. So now I have a larger flight plan that's going from here to Sun and Fun or Lakeland. And so that's another way you can do flight planning. Once you have a flight plan, you can save it with this save button. You can hit save current plan and give it a name. It assumes a name for you, but you can change this to whatever you want. And then you hit save. And now this flight plan is stored on your system. And if you go back to load, you can hit load primary plan, and there's a list of flight plans that I've saved in the past. And so you can pick any of these and load them. So that's, another one that I find myself using quite often is just menu fly direct to. I enter an airport and it creates a flight plan to that airport. That's another one I just tend to use, but is equivalent to doing flight plan and then enter a plan. You can type it or you can, touch it on the map. So we also support IFR flight plans. We also support touching and dragging. So if I wanted to sculpt this plan a little bit, I can touch and drag the route line, add as many waypoints as you want. You can dock airports and stuff like that in there into your plan. So that's obviously an important one to consider, because you're always going to be routing around airspaces and terrain and things like that. And we have another really cool way to do all of that automatically. But let's pretend we wanted to do an IFR approach into Lakeland Linder. I'm going to give you a brief rundown of how that procedure works. I hit the flight plan button. Now I'm going to go to this procedures button. This does require the IFR subscription. And you'll notice that it's listing all of the airports that are in my plan that have an appropriate procedure. So I had a few airports in the plan, but only 2 of them had approaches or instrument procedures. I can select a departure from McKinney, or I can select a star and an approach to Lakeland Linder. For now, I'm just going to select an approach. So I tap that. If I know which one I'm picking, I can immediately pick it here, or I can do select from map. And in this mode, it's going to show you the flight plan. That's what this green line is. And you can also cycle between the transitions. And you can also, right now we're in map mode, I can, oopsie doopsie. Flight plan procedures, approach. I can also switch to plate mode so I can see the same procedure on an approach plate. And then I can just cycle between the different plates that are available. And for procedures like this one, where there are multiple transitions, I can cycle between the transitions. And when I find the one that I'm intending to load, I just check that load button and click done. Gives you a little warning, the CYA. And now that plan has been added to the flight plan. If I go flight plan, you can see my entire plan now. I'm departing McKinney, going to Henderson, got a IFR approach. And if I open that up, you can see all the different waypoints that are a part of that, including the altitudes. Now, someone asked a little bit ago, how do we set the heading bugs? So if I go to my flight plan again and look at my altitudes, you can see I have an altitude set for this plan, and I obviously have a current location. Let me mention something that I failed to mention before. Anytime you're panning around the map, you'll notice this little target button appears towards the bottom left, right on top of the menu button. That's your recenter button. This is another button that gets used quite often. So I just recentered on my current location. And what I was going to show you, let me move this down just a little bit. If I pull back up the synthetic vision, the bugs are going to be set now based on that flight plan. So my altitude bug is, I forget the altitude we have set, but it's set. And if I put it back in simulation mode, you can see how these are working. So I'll use default altitude. And I'm going to pretend like I'm flying this plane again. So I'm just starting a climb. These magenta boxes that you see in the synthetic vision are highway in the sky. And so you can literally just fly through these boxes for your entire trip. But as I climb, you will see the altitude bugs start to come down. Right now, it's just a little blue dot, which indicates it's above the top of my tape. Up at the top, you have this orange dot that's underneath the orange triangle. And if I were to turn left to get off course, you'll notice that that orange dot is off to the right now. So that's why I call this a follow the ball. And if that ball is off to the right, I need to bank right to get that ball to recenter. And so your goal is to kind of keep the ball underneath the triangle. And that means you're perfectly on course. Okay, so that's hopefully answers the bug question. Let me know if it's not. Let's scan through my questions here. Any way to bug a heading not tied to flight plan leg course? And the answer to that one is no. If I understand the question, right now, the only way to have a bug on these tapes is based on the flight plan. Another question, do we have flight plans with multiple fuel stops planning yet? And the answer to that is yes. Let me stop my simulation mode. I'm going to take it back out of synthetic vision, and I'm going to show you another important feature here, and that's defining your aircraft profile. And this is critical to answer, David, your question about multiple fuel stops. And this is going, so I'm sorry, I'm going to touch menu, setup, create aircraft profile. And this is the first aircraft profile I'm creating, but you can have a bunch of them. You can have as many as you want, literally. So I'm going to enter the tail number. That's a very useful thing to make sure your ADS-B device isn't showing you as a ghost. Your tail number is used for that. And the next thing I'm going to do is search for an aircraft type. I'm going to type traveler because I'm looking for a Grumman traveler, which is this Grumman American AA5 traveler. Select. And then I'm going to use the performance specs from the database. I will tell you though that you're going to want to go look at every one of these numbers and make sure that they are appropriate to your aircraft, because we use all of these numbers. Cruise speed, climb rate, climb speed, climb burn, usable fuel. I think we have a few more than that in the Grumman, but go set these numbers. Don't depend on the database to be perfect. I'm going to save this, and now I have an aircraft profile. If I go back to my flight plan, scroll to the top, it tells you which aircraft you have selected, and you can always tap this to either edit that profile a little bit, or if you wanted to create a new one or select a different one. Because usually, I mean, it's very common for folks to have multiple aircraft profiles. So it's very easy just to tap there and to select the other profile. I'm going to clear this flight plan, and I'm going to have recreate this plan from TKI to Lakeland Linder. Now, the normal old school way to plan this flight would be to look at this entire route, compare it to weather maps, try and figure out fuel options, look at all of these different airspaces that are going to be in your way. There's a lot of variables. You'd need to pay attention to winds aloft so that you can pick the best altitude for winds. So the feature that I'm going to show you now is called Real Plan. So if I touch Flight Plan to get back to our flight plan here, go into More Options, and there's a lot of things you can do under here, but the one I'm going to show you is Real Plan. This will automatically finish this flight plan for me, and you can specify the airspaces you want to avoid, that you want to find fuel stops. You can specify your min fuel for your flight, and you can specify your altitude limits. So some of this data comes from your aircraft profile initially, but you can tweak it anytime you run real plans. Like if it's a real short flight, a min AGL of 1,000 would be completely reasonable. But for something like this, I think 2,500 would be a little more comfortable. I'm also going to check avoid water, and you can even specify how risky you want to be. I have moderate, which is going to maintain a, I want to say it's a 4-to-1 glide ratio to land. So it'll let you get out over the water, but not more than 4 times your altitude. But if you go like riskiest, it can, I think it goes 10-to-1 or something, but that's what that is. And I'm also checking ADS-B equipped. If that is unchecked, it will require you to stay outside of any ADS-B required areas. So all of these variables, including winds aloft, are going to be taken into account. That's why we have a departure time. The winds are going to change dramatically from day to day, even hour to hour. So by sliding the departure time to when you expect to depart, it's going to use the appropriate winds. And then I hit Run Real Plan. And sometimes, depending on the complexity, especially if there's a lot of terrain involved, it can take a while. This is very flat, so it was fairly quick. And there's 2 fuel stops it found. It gives you a total length of your flight, how much fuel you're going to be burning, total distance you're covering, and a cost. Oftentimes this will come up with 2 options, a fastest and a cheapest, because sometimes if you want to save some money, you can divert to get cheaper fuel, but it's going to cost you time. So it'll sometimes give you 2 options that you can decide from. And also in this mode, you can see the altitudes for the entire flight. So you can see it's going to 11.5 and staying up there almost the entire time. Done. Tap done. Now this flight plan is loaded. You can see the fuel stops. This is the first one. And then it has to jog down to get underneath this Samoa because I told it to avoid those. And if I turn on the fuel price layer, you will find that it picked a nice cheap fuel, $4.39 compared to everything else in the area. And the second fuel stop, now here you'll notice that this flight is getting out over the water a little bit, but at 11.5, you've got some glide distance to get back into land. And you'll notice it also stopped just shy of Sun and Fun because it's you can top off with some much cheaper gas. And this is an artifact. This is probably because it picked a fuel stop so close. So you can also go through and tweak this real plan and fix it if you need to. So like I just did there. But then the final leg is into Lakeland Linder. And you'll notice this TFR, that's what this red dot is around the airport. This TFR is telling you there are active demonstrations going on, and you can tap on an airspace to get all the details in your quick info pop-up about those airspaces. So that's real plan. I'm going to show you one more thing here about real plan. If I go back into my flight plan, you can see all the landing points. So we're going from McKinney to Waynesboro to Zephyr Hills, and that's the waypoint I manually tweaked. And then we're landing at Lakeland Linder. And I can open these up to see all the different lat-long points that were inserted, but typically that's not necessary. You're usually just interested in the big picture here. So that's what we have. And here's another interesting button. If you touch altitudes from the flight plan, you can see all the altitudes for this route. And you can even see why it chose what it did. So we went up to 11.5. Notice it picked the appropriate altitude for being VFR and my direction of flight. If I were heading westbound, it would have docked me at a different altitude. So it's picking that as well. But it took me at 11.5 because there's really good tailwinds almost the entire flight up there. And it drops down to get under this Class B, and then we land for fuel, and then we're back up for a little bit, and then we're landing at LAL. Close. Okay. Checking here, David Merchant says, yay, thank you. That's very encouraging. Under aircraft profile, any chance of adding miles per hour? Absolutely. If you go menu, setup, units of measure, speed and distance, you can change the system from nautical to statute or to kilometers. So I've just changed it to miles per hour. And so now it's going to show everything in the system as miles per hour. And now I've got a question. When I get a briefing for a flight plan, it is unable to load adverse conditions. Is it my setup or is it happening to everyone? I'm not familiar with that as being an issue for everyone. So there might be something going on there, or it might have been an intermittent problem. We contact Leidos to get the briefing. So we pretty much verbatim whatever they send us is what we put up on the screen. So let us know if you're continuing to have that problem. Okay, there's one more thing that I'm going to show you as part of our, what time is it? 4:49, yeah. One more thing I wanted to show you as part of our back to the basics, which is ADSB, because we get a lot of ADSB questions. In order to use ADSB with iFly, all you need to do is connect your device to your ADSB receiver. It will automatically begin overlaying NextRad and METARs and things like that. There's no setup normally that you would have to do inside of the iFly app, but there are some exceptions. There's some products out there that we do not support. Sentry is one of them. Garmin products are the other one of them. Really, all of the Garmin, most of the Garmin products, and not by our choice. Those devices are encrypted, and intentionally they are not letting other people interface with them. But all the other, UAvionics and Sky Radars and Level products, and there's a myriad of Dynon, and all of those products work great with us. What I am going to show you is sometimes you want to diagnose your ADSB. So if you go to Menu, Setup, ADSB, we have a form here that basically gives you a rundown of your ADSB connection. Since I'm not connected to an ADSB device, there's not much to see. But if you were connected, you're going to see heartbeats and GPS updates. And if you're in the air, you'll see a number of towers that you're connected to, all this good data. And instead of little dots here, you're going to have checks indicating that they're good, or an X indicating that there's an issue. Normally what you're going to see is a whole bunch of checks, but that is really all I needed to say about ADSB. But the system will automatically use your position data from ADSB. We do get the question asked, do I need to buy an iPad with with the cell network stuff so that they can have an internal GPS? And the answer is no. You can use a Wi-Fi only device, because you're probably going to connect to an ADSB receiver, and that's going to be your position information. If you do get a tablet that has a GPS, internal GPS, that's a good backup, because if you ever lose your ADSB device, it'll fail over to the internal GPS, but it's not required. So, all right, I'm going to scan over to these questions again real quick. When I get okay. Using RailPlan, I was unable to let it run until I removed some airspaces to avoid. Yes, Alfred, there are some times when it's just unable to find a route through all these airspaces or the terrain, or based on your specs, especially if it's requiring you to climb higher than your plane will climb. So sometimes playing with the settings a little bit will get that to free it up. Okay, I'm gonna call my back to the basics session complete, and go on to the next session, which is going to be very brief. We're going to talk a little bit about our recent release, version 13. I need to close this app and run my version 13 app. It's been released on Android and on Apple products. It has not yet been released on Windows. It's just a little bit of work in progress, but I'm going to point out what we've done here. Let me switch over and make sure I'm catching up on questions. Garmin now has to be open. Charlie, I am very interested with what you mean by that. So if you have more details, shoot me an email, walter@adventurepilot.com. But I'm not aware that Garmin has to be open. That would be interesting.
Walter?
Deborah asks, is there a delay with weather reporting? There is always a delay. The delay, or the little number that you see off to the right here, is how long since the system has downloaded the data from our various services. So we got the METAR database from the FAA 1 minute ago. And if you look at the individual METARs, and you can do that by tapping an airport and tapping the weather, you'll see how old that specific METAR is. In this case, that METAR is 1 hour old. So this one's probably going to be refreshed shortly. But a lot of this would depend on the weather system itself. Like METARs, the FAA just doesn't constantly, or really it's NOAA, but they don't constantly update that data. They push out a new database every hour or so for METARs less than that for TAFs. So we distinguish between when the data was last received and the actual age of the data. NexRad radar is usually, maybe 5 to 10 minute lag. It's not near as bad as METARs, of course. And winds aloft is about a 2 or 3 hour lag. So these different systems will have different delays. Okay. To bug altitude, can you click on the target altitude instrument and snap to current altitude? This seems to change the plan leg altitudes for the remainder of flight. So can you temporarily change your altitude? That's a good question. I'd have to think about that one. I know you can, if you're in the flight plan itself, you can go to flight plan and altitudes, and notice multiple altitudes is checked. So you can literally just drag this up and down, and it's going to affect that section of the plan. So you can update your altitude that way. Maybe that would help you. Is animated NexRad weather historical or forecast or both? Currently, animated NexRad is historical. So prior 45 minutes. Is the selection between ADS-B position data and internal GPS selective dynamically throughout flight for failover? It is. It is automatically going to use the ADS-B position if you're connected to an ADS-B and it has position data. If you lose that, then it automatically switches to internal. What does the flashing dot along the route represent? I assume you mean this dot right here. That is my target waypoint. So you will notice there are instruments for, let me switch to extended. There are instruments to final and to waypoint. So the flashing dot is my currently selected waypoint. Similar question, if you want to cut the corner, you can tap one of these and either direct to waypoint, or you can also do this through the flight plan. You can open your flight plan and direct to a different waypoint. Or you can even direct to a different airport entirely. Oops, it's going to hit direct to Zephyr Hills. And you can short circuit the entire plan by doing that direct to. If you ever accidentally do something like that, you'll notice there's a restore, which is like similar to undo. So if I went back into my flight plan and clicked that restore button to put that flight plan back the way it was. Okay. I'll come back to questions here in a minute. And I'm glad we're getting these questions asked because I think it does help to break it up a little bit to do these instead of waiting all the way to the end and just listen to me talk and talk. So what this release was, version 13, it's out on, like I said, Android and iOS. The main part of that release was a rebuild of our graphics engine. And this is not probably going to be recognizable to a lot of folks. But when you're panning and zooming in our app now, you're going to notice that it's much smoother. I'm using the plus and minus here because I don't have a touch layer, but pinch zooming on your tablets are going to be really graceful and smooth, where it used to be a little clunky in the older versions. That's part of what we did here. We've also improved vector mode. So we've added by default shading so you can see terrain much easier. And we have much higher resolution terrain data in general. And this is used not only for the rendering of the terrain, but the highlighting of the terrain. So when you see the terrain alerts and things like that, these are all much higher resolution. Now, the benefits of this feature are only just now starting to be felt. The nicer vector mode is like step one. But in the next few releases, you will see higher resolution plates. You're going to see higher resolution VFR charts. you're going to see higher additional layers and details that you can add to vector mode. The fact that we've rebuilt the graphics engine without getting too technical means we've left a lot more room in our app to spend CPU cycles rendering higher res data. And so we're real excited about what this feature is going to mean in the future. Another thing we've added is the ability to export plans to ForeFlight. And believe it or not, we had many people asking for this feature for several reasons. One, some of our customers they fly with ForeFlight, or they have ForeFlight. They choose to fly with us, but they have ForeFlight for commercial reasons.
There's like that, you know,
and
you look
they can then sync this plan into ForeFlight and then into Garmin products on their stack, things like that. Or they can sync it into ForeFlight or share it to their friends' ForeFlight. So if they have a big formation flight. But the bottom line here is you can use our real plan feature to create a very complicated plan, and then with just a couple of taps, send it to your ForeFlight instance or to your buddies that are using.
I was working and then it stopped.
You do that by going into the flight plan, and then more options, and then share. And then there's going to be two new options. On Windows, we just have the share ForeFlight compatible link, which you can text. Oops. Okay, thank you for telling me I need to mute everyone. Sorry, I'm hitting the wrong buttons again. Okay. There's two options on your iPad. You'll see just a share to ForeFlight. And that'll push it directly over to your instance of ForeFlight. ForeFlight will open up and it'll load the flight plan. So that's another feature that we've added, along with a lot of other optimizations and bug fixes. That's what you'll see with version 13. I'm going to spend another minute here, if y'all can bear with me, try and get my mic to work, or my speakers to work, so I can hear what you guys are saying. Because I think Juanita has some stuff to say. All right, Juanita, would you mind unmuting yourself and seeing if I can hear you?
Yep, I was just going to mention, I think there's 3 questions on chat we didn't cover. One was there towards the beginning. One was Joseph has Alt AGL and wants to know how to change it to Alt GPS.
Oh, the altitude GPS. Yep, I can do that. Thank you. Let me share my screen again. So the altitude instrument is customizable. So in fact, if you go to the extended layout, instrument layout, you should see both of them, both AGL and GPS. And correct me, and I can hear you guys now. So correct me if I'm not understanding that question. But if you want to just get rid of that instrument entirely, you can hit instrument group and then customize. You can pick that AGL instrument and delete it. And then you can add the altitude MSL instrument. And once you add it, you position it where you want it and size it how you want it. You can even color code these and then save that change. So that's how you can change it from AGL to MSL. Now, if you're asking about GPS altitude versus like your pressure altitude, that would require special hardware. And there's a lot of ADS-B, especially iLevel has several ADS-B devices that do include that capability. So you can hook it into your pitot-static and get your actual pressure altitude. And we have instruments for that as well. Great question. Anything else, Juanita?
Yeah, there, someone had asked if WAC charts are still updated.
WAC charts are not updated. The ones that we are showing are mainly because they look nice when you're zoomed way out, but they're not going to be there for long. We're switching to the planning charts.
And then someone had asked about the 740B not getting the latest version of something.
Correct. Yeah. 740B, the hardware just isn't capable of supporting a lot of the new features we've been rolling out over the past year. We do have a new product, an aviation tablet, which is an Android tablet that does support our latest releases and will for many, many years to come. So that's our new hardware platform. It's quite a bit different than the 740B platform. We are still supporting the 740B. We're just unable to push new software out to it. We will if we need to add compatible ADS-B devices, or for any sort of mission critical bugs that come up. We'll absolutely push new versions out, but it won't be getting new features very often.
And I don't know if y'all can see this, but this is what the aviation tablet looks like. It's a 7-inch screen. It's a 5-hour battery life. And if you're going to be at Oshkosh, we'll have this to demo. We're in Hangar C in July. I hope y'all stop by and see us. But we will have those back in stock in 2 weeks. But if you have any questions about any specs, just send us an email or give us a call. We can help you with that. Walter, did you want to mention about the NMEA on the next coming soon?
So our next release is 13.1, and it's coming out in just a few weeks, hopefully. And one of the cool features on there is the ability to drive an autopilot from your tablet wirelessly via another device. It's a Bluetooth serial adapter. You can buy that device on Amazon. There's several of them out there, but we're going to recommend a couple of them that we'll specifically test and make sure they're working well. But then the same way you can drive an autopilot from your 740B, you'll be able to do that from your tablet or your phone. You just connect the Bluetooth and you're off. It's a really cool feature. Android initially, iPad and iOS products shortly after that, hopefully. Apple kind of locks their stuff down a little more, so we have to get approval to do this through Apple. They're funny, but anyway. And if you guys do want to talk, you can unmute and ask your questions now. That would be fine. Somebody asks, how would I get the latest version update? Oftentimes it'll update automatically if you're using Android or iOS, but sometimes you have that feature disabled. In which case you just go to the App Store or the Play Store and search iFly EFB, and it'll show up in the results, and you just hit the download button to get the latest version. Carlos says would like a larger size for all the instruments. Well noted. Yeah. Will the Windows version be upgraded to version 13? Yes, it will. Any plans for Canadian maps? Plans is too big a word. Hopes, desires, and efforts for Canadian maps. Yes, absolutely. It is more or less a pricing issue with Nav Canada to get the official VFR chart. So we're always on the lookout for alternative ways to get good aviation data for Canada. Just haven't quite found that silver bullet yet. David asked, can I review emergency functions such as glide range and nearest airport in the event of an engine failure? Yes, let me make, That's a really great idea, and I think that's going to be a bigger demo than we have time for now. But I'm going to make a note to do a quick tip on that one, so we can go into detail about what would be your best procedure for an emergency. Can ForeFlight transfer import for? Can we take ForeFlight plans? Not yet, but that is also in the works. Can someone come to your office at the airport for something, instruction and purchasing stuff? Yes, we are on the field at TKI. We're usually here 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. We welcome visitors, and we do have products here you can play around and touch and play with and buy. I have been having problems getting, okay, the adverse conditions on many days. Okay, I'll make a note at Ashok about that issue you're reporting, and I'll escalate that to development. How do I download to my Android phone without incurring an additional charge? I already have it on the iPad. So a subscription, a basic subscription is good for 2 devices on the same platform. So you could have it on 2 Androids or you can have it on 2 iPads. If you want to add an Android and you already have an iPad, then you need the multi-platform option, and that's $30 a year. And that is really your only option there. You of course can try it for 30 days for free without an additional charge. But if you want to keep it there would be multi-platform. You also have the benefit of having 2 more devices when you get the multi-platform. So you can have it on up to 4 devices. So you could put it on Windows and your wife's phone. So it gives you more options if you did want to get the multi-platform. And I'm seeing several thank yous, and you guys are totally welcome. I thank y'all for joining us and listening. Having trouble putting in my RV7 weight and balance. Bruce, check out our forum, and I bet you can find someone that's done an RV7 weight and balance on there. It is tricky getting the weight and balance stuff configured. You have to go all the way back to the original numbers that were part of the plan when your plane was built to get all these different things. I mean, it is hard. I understand, but hopefully you can find someone that can help you there. If not, hopefully somebody at our office can help you with that.
Walter, can you
Yeah.
hear me? Well, there
Yeah.
was a question from William that said, before you went into simulation mode, the 3D view seemed to change with the view altitude. How do you?
I addressed that one. Yeah,
Okay.
I did. We zoomed in and out, changed the altitude. Have you thought about audible voice alerts? Yes, we have them for terrain. We're adding them. It's on the list, the short list, to add the audible alerts for traffic, or the voice call outs for traffic. So instead of just getting the sound, you'll hear a little more details, the 3 o'clock and altitude and stuff for the traffic alerts.
Walter,
Yes, Larry.
I have been ill for the last year and have been flying. I've forgotten how to connect my level Astro with my 740B to get ADSB in. What is the procedure for doing that?
So all you should have to do is turn the Astrolink on, and it will expose a Wi-Fi network just by turning it on. So you would go into your 740B. That very first, when it boots up, there's the 6 panes. Then the bottom right is settings. You tap that, and then you go into network, and you connect.
I don't know what you want to end up doing, but you've got what on your current vehicle? 13,500?
Okay, that was not. Yeah, you would basically connect the Wi-Fi from the 740B to the Astrolink, And we walk people through that all the time. If you want to give us a call.
I will.
yeah.
Thank you very much. I
Mhm.
think it's just that there are two inputs and I'm not getting the right one. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The question Joe has is, will you keep the user experience consistent between the EFB and the legacy version so I can plan and simulate flights on EFB on my iPad and have the same experience while flying my 740B? We have no plans to do dramatic changes to the look and feel of the menus, the structures and things like that, at least in terms of functionality. We may clean up the UI, so, make the buttons look a little fresher and stuff, but the flow and things like that is going to be consistent with what you have on the 740B. Carlos points out the Sun and Fun sale ends soon. So thank you, Carlos. Yeah, we're offering right now 10% off on new and renewed subscriptions. So it's a good time, even if you have a couple months left. If you go in and renew now, you'll get the discount and it'll add to the end of your subscription. You don't lose any time. Let's see. Michael is saying sometimes the flight plan share doesn't work. Any ideas why? I assume you're talking about the share to the local network. I would just make sure your both devices are connected to the same Wi-Fi network. If they're both on the yoke, I would assume they're both connected to a common ADS-B receiver. That typically works pretty consistently. On iPads, it may be related to some security settings. Make sure both iPads have like network discovery enabled, and make sure that the iFly EFB app on both iPads has network. I forget what the actual setting is. Maybe it's local. There's different things that you could grant or deny an individual app. Just make sure everything has been granted to iFly EFB. And I'm going to continue to take questions. So Andrew, I see yours. But I am going to also say we are at 5:17. This entire meeting is going to be recorded. So if somebody does have to drop off, that is not going to be a problem. We will not be offended. But I am just going to continue to answer questions until I feel like we've got just about everyone's problem solved here. So Andrew's asking, have we looked at WitMotion AHRS Bluetooth? Have not looked at that. Googling it right now. So, and if you have more information you want to send me on that, Walter@adventurepilot.com, happy to take a look at it. So Peter's saying an audible warning tone toward voice, more like ForeFlight for certain callouts, would be more professionals. Thank you, Peter, for that feedback. I agree, and we are gonna add some more of those audio callouts. Should you wait till Oshkosh to renew? If you've got time, if your subscription's good through Oshkosh, you can wait. It's not going to be a problem. We'll probably have 10% off. If you want to guarantee the discount, you could renew now and you still won't lose any time. Mr. Crawford, good point on turning off cellular data before sharing the flight plan to force Wi-Fi. That's an interesting idea. I thought we sent it across all the networks, but iPads are a little funny sometimes with how that works. I get the iFly app crashes intermittently on the new EFB. You're talking about the new version 13, and 13.1, which is coming out within a week or two. It's already in beta. Has addressed, I think, a lot of those stability issues. We've seen like certain random devices that tend to crash a little more often than others. Sometimes you can go 30 minutes or 2 hours or 4 hours and then it crashes. You just rerun the app and it starts up and where you left off. So hopefully it's not a big deal, but we are taking it very seriously, and it's been all hands on deck to fix that stability issue. So we're about a week or 2 out from that. Nano says, when I'm on my iPad at home, I try to put a flight plan or just play my iFly. A please wait appears in the middle of the screen. I would make sure you have the latest version. Nano, there was a bug a while ago related to iFlight Planner integration that would cause that please wait. So you might want to double check that you don't have iFlight Planner integration enabled, and then don't have an iFlight Planner login. You do that by running the app, going to Flight Plan, and then touch Sync with iFlight Planner. And then if it's enabled, you can disable it right there, and I think that might fix your problem. If it prompts you to log in, then that means that's not the issue. It's something else. You might give us a call. Andrew says, I've been able to share flight plans between common devices, but not between iOS and Android. That's also interesting. They are, it's a network messaging protocol. So it's called UDP, and we just blast the data across the network. Theoretically, anything that's on the same network should be able to pick it up. So Andrew, we do that in the office a lot, where we're sending data from Android to iOS and back and forth. It should work. So there's probably something we can do to get you working if you want to give us a call. Can a button be added to the flight plan page to transfer plan? Tim, I'm going to need more detail on that question. I'm not sure I understand. You can unmute yourself if you want to ask it too.
Yeah, this is Tim here. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I hear you, Tim. Go ahead.
Okay. On the when I have my Dynon set as to receiving my flight plans, it'd be nice if I'm changing the flight plan that it doesn't repeatedly issue out a flight plan updated message every time you manipulate something in the flight plan
Oh, you mean on the Dynon?
on the Dynon. So then
Yeah.
it'd be nice just if you're in the flight plan page and you make a changes or several changes, that you can just hit the button to commit it over to the Dynon when you're done, rather than having it accept every single change. Otherwise you have to go a few menus deep or so to turn off sharing flight plan. Then you go back and modify your flight plan, and then you have to go back and turn it on. It's busy work in the cockpit.
Got it. Oh, great feedback. I wonder if just having a lag, because you're like, I would hate it if somebody forgot to commit and they never got their flight plans sent over to the Dynon. But if we had, if there's a lot of changes going on, just don't send anything until, there's been no changes for a minute or two, and then send it. Something like that might be better as well.
Yeah, sometimes it can be like if ATC is trying to give you a vector or something to somewhere, you'd like to kind of commit it right away if possible. But
true, yeah. Okay, well noted. I've made a note that'll go on the list, on our feature list.
Okay, thanks.
Alex says, compared to my iFly to my 740, the iPad altitude is way off. I would, if you're using the internal iPad GPS, I would say I'm not too surprised about that. Altitude is the hardest of the dimensions to get. The X and Y are pretty easy. The Z is quite difficult and requires a really good GPS lock. And yeah, I think you're right. iPad just doesn't have an aviation grade GPS. If you connect it to an ADS-B device, it would probably take care of that problem. And Andrew says, suggest you remove the time limit on demo installation and introduce some other function limitation that will allow learning. Got it. So in other words, instead of a 30-day demo, have it just shut down some capabilities. Well noted. Would be great for Dynon to use your flight planning for their system. Okay, I'll tell them. Of course, you can use our system to do all your flight planning and just push it over to Dynon. Kind of do that. These are good questions and good comments and good feedback. And we've now had 30 seconds of silence. All right, I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for spending your afternoons with us. And I enjoyed this session. And I get more talking done on events like this than I do all the rest of the month. So it was a good exercise for my vocal cords. And we're going to be at Oshkosh in July. Hope some of you guys are able to stop by our booth on Hangar C. Juanita, anything else you want to add?
I just saw there's a couple more questions, or I see one question that came in from Alex.
Well, Mark is saying how to access recording. We're going to make this available on YouTube. So just keep an eye out. We'll probably have it in our next newsletter, but you can also just go to our channel at any time and find it. Voice alerts on landings. Okay, well noted, Andrew. I guess all we have now is the 500. We can do more than that, I'm sure. And then show a perimeter of glide range. Is that right? iFly can show a perimeter of glide range. That is correct, Alex. We have a layer that is the glide range. So you turn that on and you get the ring around your plane. That was in the demo a little earlier too. So I see your thank yous from everybody else, and I thank you guys. I think we're going to call that a meeting. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody. You guys
Thank you
enjoy the
so
rest of your
much.
Saturdays.
So good to see y'all. And I recognized many names, so it was great to spend time with y'all. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.